Don B at 19 years of age. I had a loaded shotgun in my mouth and was trying to pull the trigger with my big toe. A voice said, "If you do this, Don, that will be your last drink." So I carefully unloaded the gun and went and got myself another bottle of brandy. I was a competitive cyclist and was attracted to older friends. My first drink was after a bike race at 14. I placed and won a few pounds, so we went to the pub and I bought the boys a beer. I didn't like it, so I had sherry and dry ginger. I learned that if you drink too much, you get drunk, and I decided to control my drinking. I immediately became a regular drinker, and I always told myself that I wouldn't get drunk, but I always did. I was hopeless from the start. Very quickly, I graduated to brandy and then whiskey. Later, I wasn't particularly choosy. I was a sprinter on the bike as well as in drinking, and I got into strife very quickly. I was a nuisance drunk and would get aggro, which is dangerous for a little fella like me. My drinking deteriorated quickly and I suffered blackouts. I'd do awful things, and my mates would tell me to go away and say, "You shouldn't drink." I just thought they were making up stories because they were jealous. At 19, I was frightened of leaving my room and had terrible nightmares. I checked the wardrobe to find the person hiding in it. I used to put a bottle of McWilliam's cream sherry under my pillow, and when I saw this bloke standing over my bed about to stab me, I'd go under the blankets and have a sip. Then he would go away. It was like that right from the start. I didn't do any social drinking. I'd be in a shout, and I'd go to the saloon bar and have a couple of extra brandies, so I'd be doing 3 to their 1. I drank metho, not because I was down and out, but I thought maybe that would do what I wanted. The reason for my depression and unhappiness was those, and my parents' divorce and everything else that was wrong. I always had an excuse. After my parents' divorce, my mother married the man who had been the town drunk and had started the Wagga Wagga group of Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't say anything about my drinking. He knew better. I went to 2 or 3 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous when I was about 19 years of age to keep an eye on my stepfather to make sure he wasn't drinking and wasn't going to hurt my mum. Being a genius, I knew that AA was recruiting new members, and that's why they were telling bits of my story. I wasn't a dill. I thought I heard them say many times, "Listen for the differences, not the similarities." So I found enough differences to avoid identifying. After a half-hearted suicide attempt, my stepfather, my mother and the local GP shanghaied me into Hyderabad Hospital in Sydney. It was the first private hospital in Australia to treat alcoholism. I hadn't been there long when the late Dr. Sylvester Minogue called me into his office and said to me, "Don, you're an alcoholic." I said, "Look, Doc, we run a 24-hour service station and restaurant, and my stepfather is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, so if I sound alcoholic, it's because I mix with those people." I got offended and told him exactly how it was. Back in my room, I went on a hunger strike for 3 days, which no doubt upset him. After 6 weeks, I got drunk, then caught the train back to Wagga, arriving home in worse shape than when I left. I was introduced to more Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I had short periods off the grog, and then I'd drink to celebrate that I hadn't had a drink. In a period of sobriety, I bought a new Holden ute. I was so proud of it. While washing it, I found a panel near the spare wheel. I had an argument with myself about how much sweet sherry would fit in. I thought 6, so I bought 8, many bottles, not that I was going to drink. In between my drinking bouts, I had the odd visit to Alcoholics Anonymous to support the poor devils and keep an eye on my stepfather, not that he ever drank. I didn't really have a problem, so I'd take my bottle of cream sherry to the meeting and hide it in the geranium bush. When I drank, I became invisible, so I thought they didn't realise that I was wandering out for top-ups. At this stage, the youngest person in the room was 35, so another of my excuses was that at 19 I was way too young for Alcoholics Anonymous. One night, on a bit of a spree, I insisted on driving. I mounted the footpath on the Murrumbidgee Bridge and hit a 12-year-old boy wheeling his bike. I thought, if the higher power existed, he was kind to me because I hit the kid's front wheel and he was unharmed. The police came to see me. I have no reason to doubt this story, but I don't remember any of it. I gave it away via the white knuckle method. I didn't drink for 6 months. I used to dream about big, cold, frothy beers with foam running down the sides, but I didn't drink. I got through Christmas Day and thought it wasn't fair that my mates were out celebrating. I went to the hotel for 2 beers. 18 hours later, a friend who also had an alcohol problem put me in a cab and sent me home. I came to rest on the front steps of the service station with a hot bottle of beer in one hand and a glass in the other. My black Labrador was yelping and limping because some mongrel had laid the boot in, and I was the only one there. For some reason I was able to take stock of my situation at that point. I wasn't a praying man because, to me, there was no God. Well, there was, but he hated me, and the feeling was mutual. The next day was the usual Alcoholics Anonymous meeting at Wagga, and I went with my stepfather. We parked in the back of the church hall, and I was creeping along, fearful that someone would see me. This was 1961. He said, "Did anyone see you the night you were locked up for drunk and disorderly, or when you walked out of the police cell the next morning? You swore you'd never drink again after you hit the kid's bike. Were you proud of those things?" "No." "So now you've got something to be proud of. You're doing something about it." I knew these people had something that worked because in my infrequent visits the same people were there and doing okay, and my stepfather had stayed sober, but I knew it wouldn't work for me because I was different. So for the first time in my life I did as I was told. People said, "Don't worry about the steps. If you don't drink today you can't get drunk. Pick up the phone before you pick up a drink and go to regular and frequent meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous." We used to travel to Cootamundra, Tumut and Batlow. You'd have your meetings going in the car at the meeting and coming home. I will never forget Alan, the photographer, a very quiet fellow. I'd often finished up at his place at 11 p.m. He would make me a cup of tea or coffee and listen to me talk about I, me and my, the most interesting person in the world. Later, making my amends, I visited him this time at a respectable hour. When I thanked him for helping me keep sober, he said, "No, Don, I need to thank you for keeping me sober." I was puzzled until he explained, "When you used to come and pull me out of bed, you didn't like my coffee and whinged about the biscuits, and all you wanted to talk about was poor me. I was working on serenity, and also I didn't want to go back to where you were." I stayed sober, knowing it wouldn't work. Days became weeks, and weeks became years. I started to grow up. My mum had married my stepfather. He had a daughter with whom he'd had no contact for many years, so I came down to Melbourne and met her and immediately fell in love with her. A few weekends later, I took her to Wagga to meet her dad, and a few weeks later, I sat on his bed and asked his permission to marry his daughter. I thought the answer to life's problems was to reject people before they reject you. My thinking was that if I'm not perfectly perfect, then I am perfectly no good, and I was not going to let others see that. I started to feel like part of the family, but I thought they only said they liked me because they felt sorry for me. I began to realize I had to do something about myself, to learn to cope emotionally. Horror of horrors. There was a step talking about defects of character. Thank God I never had any of them. Defects of character are not exclusive to the alcoholic, but we seem to have a double dose of human emotions, 2 lots of fear, guilt, impatience, anger, etc. I began to realize that grog had caused me a lot of trouble, and I realized alcohol was the outer showing of the inner turmoil. Without the anesthetic, I'd unleashed a 15-year-old kid who was too tall, too skinny, and too hairy. It was like being naked in the middle of the MCG with 100,000 pairs of eyes looking at me. It was too much for a 23-year-old. It was going to take time. The AA program helped me learn to cope with life. It takes 3 to 5 years to get mental stability. I don't think people really understand how inflamed the alcoholic brain is, and that recovery takes time. Easy does it, but do it. I got a job as a sales representative in the grocery industry and did that for 9 years. In 1977, I was talking to my higher power about doing something more useful. That's how it happens in sobriety. You get well physically, emotionally, and then spiritually. I took a job in Warburton Hospital running the gift shop. There wasn't an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in Warburton. A lady called Mary had tried to get a meeting going. I was sitting on the bench with the town's local drunk, and I offered to put him in touch with Mary. She had been praying for years that she would be able to help someone. We had our first meeting in Mary's lounge room. In 15 years, we never had more than 5 local members, but we usually had about 50 people attend the meeting. It was a dinky DAEA meeting like in the old days, none of the philosophy, just stories of people's drinking. We all understood that the most important person in any meeting is the newcomer or the person coming in from a break. I had dreams of starting an inpatient or residential program for recovering alcoholics. I thought Warburton was the ideal location for that. I lobbied a bit, but was frustrated because no one could capture my vision. Some were horrified. A few weeks later, I was summoned to a marketing meeting and asked how long it would take to start a recovery program. I said, "Give me a fortnight and I'll get the program on paper." I had 12 lectures, all based on the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. We put a discreet advertisement in the Age. Do you have a problem with alcohol? Do you want to stop drinking? If you're ready to quit, I'm willing to help. Ring Don. Don B. My first patient was Ben, a Danish guy. He had seen the advertisement, cut it out, and sat it on his kitchen table. He drank on it for a fortnight before he made the phone call for help and came to the hospital. My boss, a doctor, asked, "How do you go about treating alcoholics?" It was hard for him to understand me sitting on the end of the bed and talking about the footy or the races, that I didn't tell people what they should do. I just told them my story. The alcoholic knows what the doctor wants to hear, but another alcoholic knows what the other is thinking. He can understand you and respect that you can see through him. I used to say to my patients, "I can't get you sober, I'm just the signpost." If you are fair dinkum and go to regular meetings and don't drink a day at a time, things you can't dream will happen to you. Doors will open in your life that you never knew existed. This was certainly true for me. In the early days, we used to hold our meetings in the hospital fire escape so people who needed to smoke could do so. The program grew and became well known interstate and overseas. It was successful because it was based on pure Alcoholics Anonymous. It was an open program. Anyone could come to the lectures and people would bring their 12-step people. We'd have about 300 people at the annual reunion. After 15 years, I left Warburton and joined Pine Lodge Clinic with the late Bob Preston. I was hired to do marketing. I used to visit factories and talk about the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. In the early to mid-1990s, when Bob got sick, they asked me to run the program. I put my heart and soul into the program until, due to ill health, I retired at 59 years of age. 17. The Victorian Voice to ring Dr. Bob. In 2009, I travelled with another member to the USA and did the Alcoholics Anonymous pilgrimage. It included Bill's house, Stepping Stones, now a museum, Dr. Bob's house, also a museum, and their grave sites. We went to Vermont, where Bill was raised by his granddad. I sat on Bill's bed in the attic. We visited the cemetery where Bill was buried. It was a very emotional experience. I am so thankful for my sobriety. Today I lead a very happy life, which I never believed was possible. I have a wonderful wife, 2 daughters, a son, and 5 grandchildren. I thank God every day that they have never seen me drink. I ride with a group of veteran cyclists, play golf, and even got interested in gardening. In 2000, my country honoured me with the Order of Australia Medal for my work in the field of alcoholism. My higher power, he's my mate today. I had struggled with God. I had a huge sense of guilt and thought he wouldn't want anything to do with me. I truly believe that God uses all kinds of people to do all kinds of things. The apprenticeship I served prepared me for the work I was going to do. Today, it's evident that there is a guiding hand in my life. Had I not gone to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't have lived long enough to realise this. I'm 72 years of age, and come Boxing Day 2011, and a day at a time, I will have ticked up 50 years of sobriety. Not that that means anything, because I'm only 1 drink away from being a drunk. Despite difficulties and challenges, I've never needed to pick up a drink. The real name for this program is Life Be In It. I live the program every day. It's in my heart.